They say revenge is a dish best served cold. I prefer mine scalding hot, with a side of public humiliation and a garnish of social destruction. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start with the moment I realized my wife of 15 years had decided to trade me in for a gym membership. My name is Miles Harwood, and at 45, I thought I had life figured out. Financial analyst by day, devoted husband by night, owner of a respectable mortgage and an unremarkable Honda Civic. The American dream, wrapped in khakis and seasoned with middle-class complacency. Turns out, dreams have expiration dates, and mine was about to curdle like milk left in the sun. It was a Tuesday evening in March when I first noticed the cracks in my perfectly ordinary life. Lila was sitting at our kitchen island, phone pressed to her ear, voice dropped to that conspiratorial whisper women use when they're planning either a surprise party or an affair. Given that my birthday wasn't for 6 months, I was betting on the latter. I know, she was saying, twirling a strand of her auburn hair around her finger. But you have to understand, it's complicated. Complicated. That's what people say when they want to justify doing something they know is wrong, like ordering dessert on a diet or sleeping with your high school boyfriend while your husband is upstairs organizing his sock drawer. I cleared my throat as I entered the kitchen, and Lila jumped like she'd been caught stealing from the collection plate. "Oh, hi, honey," she said, ending the call with suspicious speed. "Just talking to Vera about work stuff." Vera Morrison, Lila's best friend since college and professional enabler of bad decisions. If Vera was involved, this was going to get messy. Vera had the moral compass of a broken GPS and the discretion of a town crier. "Work stuff that requires whispering?" I asked, opening the refrigerator and pretending to study its contents, like they might reveal the secrets of the universe, or at least explain why my wife was acting like a teenager caught sneaking out. "Client confidentiality," Lila said quickly. Too quickly. You know how it is in travel consulting. I knew exactly how it was. Lila worked for a boutique travel agency that specialized in luxury getaways for people with more money than sense. The kind of place where client confidentiality usually meant not mentioning that Mr. Peterson from accounting was taking his secretary to Cabo instead of his wife. Over the next few weeks, the signs multiplied like rabbits in spring. Late-night texts that made her smile in ways I hadn't seen in years. New lingerie that never made an appearance in our bedroom. Receipts for restaurants I'd never been to, charged to our joint credit card with the casual arrogance of someone who assumed I wouldn't notice. But I did notice. Financial analysts are trained to spot irregularities, and my wife was becoming one giant red flag in designer clothing. The smoking gun came on a rainy Thursday evening. I was working late in my home office when I heard Lila on the phone again, this time in our bedroom with the door closed. The old house had thin walls and excellent acoustics, a combination that was about to save me years of wondering what went wrong. "Conrad, you know I can't just leave him," she was saying. "It's not that simple." Conrad Hale, her high school sweetheart, the one who got away, the golden boy who'd broken her heart senior year by choosing a football scholarship over true love. I'd heard the story 1,000 times, usually when Lila had too much wine and felt nostalgic for her youth. "I know, baby, I know," she continued. "But Miles doesn't suspect anything. He's too wrapped up in his spreadsheets to notice what's happening right under his nose." Spreadsheets. She was cheating on me and insulting my profession in the same conversation. That took talent. I sat in my office chair, listening to my wife plan my betrayal with the methodical precision she usually reserved for booking 5-star hotels. They'd been meeting for months, apparently. Started as innocent coffee dates when Conrad moved back to town to open a fitness center. Progressed to lunch, then dinner, then weekend getaways disguised as work trips. The conference in Denver was perfect, Lila was saying. 3 days, no interruptions. God, I'd forgotten how good we were together. Denver, the travel industry conference she'd attended last month. The one she'd complained about for weeks beforehand, calling it boring and mandatory. Apparently, it had been neither. I could have confronted her right then, stormed into the bedroom, demanded explanations, played the wounded husband seeking truth and reconciliation. But I didn't, because somewhere between Conrad and spreadsheets, something cold and calculating had awakened in my chest. Something that wanted more than truth. Something that wanted justice. Instead, I quietly opened my laptop and began to plan. The first step was information gathering. Lila, bless her cheating heart, had always been technologically naive. She used the same password for everything, our wedding date, because she was sentimental like that, and her tablet synced automatically to our home Wi-Fi network. Within an hour, I had access to months of text messages, emails, and photos that painted a vivid picture of her double life. The messages were a masterpiece of suburban infidelity, steamy exchanges about hotel rooms and stolen afternoons, complaints about having to pretend everything was normal with her boring husband, plans for future trips and discussions about seeing where this leads. My personal favorite was from 2 weeks earlier. Miles made his famous lasagna tonight. I had to fake enthusiasm for 20 minutes. All I could think about was being in your arms. Famous lasagna. I'd spent 3 hours making that lasagna from scratch, including the pasta. She'd asked for seconds, but the real treasure was in her email drafts folder. A message she'd apparently written but never sent, titled, "My Situation." It was addressed to Conrad and laid out her entire strategy. She wasn't planning to leave me, at least not immediately. I was too financially useful, too stable, too convenient. Instead, she wanted to maintain the marriage as cover while pursuing her true happiness with him. "Miles is predictable," she'd written. "He'll never suspect as long as I'm careful. And honestly, the security he provides gives us the freedom to explore our connection without pressure." Security. That's what 15 years of marriage had made me. A human insurance policy with a steady paycheck and a 401k. I printed everything. Emails, texts, photos of them together at restaurants I'd never been to, hotel receipts, even her draft email laying out her strategy. Then I sat back and considered my options. I could go the traditional route: confrontation, couples therapy, lawyers, and a messy divorce that would cost me half of everything I'd worked for. Or I could get creative. I chose creativity. The plan began with a simple dinner reservation. Saturday night at Chez Laurent, the French restaurant where Lila had taken Conrad for their 1-month anniversary of official adultery. I'd seen the photos she'd sent him, her in the red dress I'd bought her for our anniversary, him in a suit that probably cost more than my car payment. "Surprise," I told her that Saturday morning. "I thought we should do something special, just the two of us." She looked panicked for exactly 3 seconds before her face settled into its practiced smile. "That's wonderful, honey. What's the occasion?" "Do I need an occasion to take my wife out for dinner?" The question hung in the air between us like smoke from a house fire. She was probably calculating whether Conrad would be at the restaurant, whether any of their mutual friends might see us, whether her carefully constructed double life was about to collapse like a house of cards in a hurricane. "Of course not," she said finally. "I'll wear something special." I was counting on it. Saturday evening arrived with the kind of crisp spring air that makes everything feel possible, even revenge. I dressed carefully. My best suit, the one Lila had picked out for me last Christmas, back when she still pretended to care about my appearance. Irony, it seemed, had a sense of humor. Lila emerged from our bedroom in a black cocktail dress I'd never seen before. It was elegant, expensive, and definitely not purchased for my benefit. She'd done her hair in loose waves and applied makeup with the kind of precision that suggested this wasn't just dinner. This was a performance. "You look beautiful," I said, and meant it. That was the hell of it. Even knowing what I knew, even planning what I was planning, she could still take my breath away. 15 years of marriage hadn't dimmed her ability to make me forget, temporarily, that I was married to a stranger. Thank you, she replied, checking her reflection in the hallway mirror one last time. You clean up pretty well yourself. The drive to Chez Laurent was filled with the kind of small talk that passes for conversation in failing marriages. Weather, work, plans for the weekend, surface-level pleasantries that skated carefully around the crater-sized hole in the middle of our relationship. I'd called ahead, naturally. Made sure we'd get the same table where she'd celebrated her first month of adultery. The hostess, a young woman with the kind of practiced smile that comes from dealing with the city's social elite, led us through the dimly lit restaurant to a corner booth with an excellent view of the entire dining room. This is lovely, Lila said, settling into her seat. Very romantic. I thought you might appreciate it, I replied, opening my menu. After all, you seem to have such fond memories of this place. She looked up sharply, but I was studying the wine list with the intensity of a scholar deciphering ancient texts. Let her wonder. Doubt was the first ingredient in the recipe I was cooking up. We ordered. She chose the duck. I went with the lamb, and I selected a bottle of wine that cost more than most people spend on groceries in a week. If this was going to be our last dinner as a married couple, I wanted it to be memorable. Miles, Lila said, as the sommelier poured our wine, is everything okay? You seem different tonight. Different how? I asked, taking a sip of the Bordeaux and nodding approvingly at the sommelier. I don't know. More present, I suppose. Like you're really seeing me for the first time in years. She wasn't wrong. I was seeing her clearly for the first time in years. The way she fidgeted with her wedding ring when she was nervous. The way her eyes darted toward the restaurant entrance every few minutes, probably checking to see if Conrad might walk in. The way she smiled just a little too brightly, like an actress who'd forgotten her lines but was determined to stay in character. Maybe I am, I said. Sometimes it takes a shock to wake you up. A shock? Oh, you know. Realizing that life is short, that people aren't always who you think they are, that sometimes the person sleeping next to you every night is a complete stranger. Her hand froze halfway to her wine glass. Miles, what are you talking about? I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out my phone. With a few quick taps, I opened her text messages, the ones that had automatically synced to my device thanks to our shared cloud account. I set the phone on the table between us, screen facing up. The most recent message thread was right there. Conrad's name at the top, followed by a string of messages that would make a romance novelist blush, including one from earlier that day. Wish I was having dinner with you tonight instead of pretending to work late. Can't wait to hold you again. Lila's face went through a fascinating series of expressions: confusion, recognition, panic, and finally, a kind of resigned defiance. Like a gambler who'd been caught cheating, but was still hoping to bluff their way out of the game. Miles, I can explain. Can you? I interrupted, picking up the phone and scrolling through more messages. Because I'd love to hear your explanation for this one. Miles made his famous lasagna tonight. I had to fake enthusiasm for 20 minutes. All I could think about was being in your arms. She was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. How did you... Technology, darling. It's amazing what you can learn when you pay attention. I took another sip of wine, savoring both the vintage and the moment. Did you know that when you sync your devices to the same cloud account, all your messages automatically share? Fascinating stuff. The waiter appeared with our appetizers, setting them down with professional obliviousness to the domestic drama unfolding at table 12. Lila waited until he was gone before leaning forward, her voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Miles, please, let me explain. It's not what you think. It's not what I think? I laughed, a sound with no humor in it. Lila, I've read every text message you've sent him for the past 4 months. I've seen the photos from your romantic dinners. I know about Denver, about the weekend in Chicago you called a girls' trip, about the afternoon sessions at the Marriott downtown. I know everything. She slumped back in her seat like a marionette whose strings had been cut. How long have you known? Long enough to make some preparations. What kind of preparations? I smiled, and something in my expression must have warned her that this conversation was about to take a very different turn than she'd expected. Well, for starters, I've moved our joint savings into an account with only my name on it. Amazing how easy that is when you're married and have power of attorney. I've also canceled your credit cards, the ones tied to my accounts anyway, and changed the passwords on all our shared services. Her face went pale. You can't do that. Actually, I can. It's my money, Lila. My job, my income, my accounts. You just happen to have access to them. I cut a piece of my appetizer and chewed thoughtfully. I've also taken the liberty of contacting your boss at the travel agency. Turns out, using company resources to book personal trips for your extramarital affairs is grounds for termination. Who knew? You didn't. Her voice was barely a whisper. Oh, but I did. I sent Janet a very detailed email this afternoon, complete with documentation of how you've been using the company's preferred vendor rates to book romantic getaways with your boyfriend. She was quite interested in the information. Lila's hands were shaking now. Miles, please! You're destroying my life! No, sweetheart. You destroyed your life. I'm just making sure everyone gets a clear view of the wreckage. She started to cry then, tears streaming down her carefully made-up face. A few other diners glanced our way, probably assuming they were witnessing a proposal gone wrong or some other romantic drama. If they only knew. What do you want from me? She asked. Nothing, I said, signaling the waiter for the check. Absolutely nothing, because after tonight, you're not my problem anymore. I paid the bill, in cash, because I was feeling dramatic, and stood up. Lila remained seated, staring at her untouched duck like it might contain the answers to life's great mysteries. The divorce papers will be served on Monday, I told her. I suggest you find somewhere else to stay. The locks on the apartment will be changed by tomorrow morning. You can't kick me out of my own home. It's not your home, Lila. It's my apartment, in my name, paid for with my money. You're just a guest who's overstayed her welcome. I left her sitting there in the restaurant where she'd celebrated her betrayal, surrounded by the ruins of her carefully constructed double life. As I walked to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, genuine satisfaction. But this was just the opening move. The real game was about to begin. Monday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a brass band in a library. I was at my office by 7, coffee in hand, and revenge on my mind. My phone had been buzzing all weekend with increasingly frantic messages from Lila, ranging from tearful apologies to angry demands to threats involving lawyers she couldn't afford. I'd ignored them all. Sometimes the most powerful response is no response at all. My assistant, Hannah, knocked on my office door around 9. Hannah was one of those rare people who combined professional competence with personal loyalty, a combination that was about to prove invaluable. Miles, there's a woman here to see you. Says she's your wife. She seems upset. Through my office window, I could see Lila in the reception area. She looked like she'd slept in her car, which, given that the locks had been changed on the apartment as promised, might not have been far from the truth. Her hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, and she was wearing the same black dress from Saturday night. Send her in, I said. And Hannah? You might want to stick around. This could get interesting. Lila burst through my office door like a hurricane making landfall. Miles, you bastard, you can't do this to me. Good morning to you too, dear. You're looking well. Don't you dare joke with me. I spent the night in my car because you changed the locks. My credit cards are canceled, my boss won't return my calls, and I can't access any of our accounts. Our accounts? I leaned back in my chair, fingers steepled. I think you're confused about the concept of ownership. 15 years of marriage gives me rights. 15 years of marriage gave you rights. Adultery forfeited them. She was pacing now, her voice rising to a level that was attracting attention from my colleagues in the surrounding offices. Perfect. You're being vindictive and cruel. I'm being thorough. There's a difference. I made a mistake, okay? People make mistakes. Mistakes are accidental, Lila. Booking hotel rooms, planning romantic getaways, and maintaining a 4-month affair require intention and effort. That's not a mistake. That's a choice. My office door opened again, and Hannah stepped in with a cup of coffee and a concerned expression. Is everything all right in here? Everything's fine, Hannah. My wife was just leaving. I am not leaving. Lila spun around to face Hannah. This man is trying to destroy my life. This man, I said calmly, is trying to get back to work. You're the one causing a scene in a professional environment. More faces were appearing in doorways now. My colleagues were getting a front row seat to the collapse of my marriage, and Lila was providing the entertainment. I almost felt bad for her. Almost. Miles, please, she said, switching tactics from anger to pleading. Can't we talk about this rationally, like adults? Adults don't cheat on their spouses and then expect to negotiate their way out of the consequences. I'll end it with Conrad. I'll never see him again. We can go to counseling, work this out. Too late for that conversation, sweetheart. You should have thought about counseling before you started sleeping with your high school boyfriend. The profanity hung in the air like a slap. Several of my colleagues actually gasped. Lila's face turned crimson, whether from embarrassment or rage, I couldn't tell. You're humiliating me in front of your entire office. You're humiliating yourself. I'm just providing the venue. My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it and smiled. Oh, this is perfect timing. Lila, you might want to check your phone. She fumbled for her purse, pulled out her iPhone with shaking hands. Her face went white as she read whatever message had just arrived. What did you do? I didn't do anything. That's a message from your boss, isn't it? Janet finally got around to reviewing those expense reports I sent her. Lila was staring at her phone like it was a snake that might bite her. She fired me. She fired me by text message. Classy, but efficient. Miles, I have nothing now. No job, no money, nowhere to live. You have Conrad. I'm sure he'll be happy to support you. After all, isn't that what true love is about? Commitment through good times and bad? She was crying again, but this time it was different. These weren't tears of anger or frustration. These were tears of genuine despair. The kind that comes when you realize you've burned every bridge and salted the earth behind you. I can't believe you're doing this to me. I can't believe you did this to us. But here we are. Hannah cleared her throat diplomatically. Miles, you have the Morrison meeting in 10 minutes. Right. Thank you, Hannah. I stood up, straightened my tie, and grabbed my briefcase. Lila, I think it's time for you to go. Security can escort you out if necessary. She looked around my office one last time, taking in the framed photos of our wedding, our vacations, our life together. I'd been meaning to take those down. 15 years, she whispered. 15 years, and this is how it ends? No, I said, walking past her toward the door. This is how it ends, with you facing the consequences of your choices while I get on with my life. I left her standing in my office, surrounded by the ruins of our shared history and the curious stares of my colleagues. By the time I returned from my meeting an hour later, she was gone. But the real show was just getting started. That evening, I drove to Conrad's gym, Hale's Fitness, a boutique operation in the trendy part of downtown that catered to people with more money than sense. The kind of place where personal trainers cost more per hour than most people make in a day. I'd done my research on Conrad Hale, 38 years old, never married, living off a trust fund from his deceased parents while playing at being a fitness entrepreneur. The gym was hemorrhaging money. I'd pulled his business credit reports, and his lifestyle was funded entirely by family wealth that was rapidly dwindling. In other words, he was exactly the kind of man who would seduce a married woman for sport and then panic when faced with the reality of actually supporting her. I found him in his office, a glass-walled space overlooking the main workout floor. He was everything Lila had described in her swooning text messages, tall, muscular, with the kind of effortless good looks that had probably opened doors his entire life. He was also, I noted with satisfaction, looking distinctly uncomfortable as I knocked on his door. "Conrad Hale?" "Yeah. Who's asking?" "Miles Harwood, Lila's husband." His face went through the same series of expressions I'd seen on Lila's at the restaurant. Confusion, recognition, and then a kind of resigned dread. "Look, man, I can explain." "No need. I'm not here for explanations. I'm here to give you some information." I sat down in the chair across from his desk without being invited. "First, Lila is now unemployed, homeless, and broke. Congratulations. She's all yours." He blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean she's no longer my problem. She's been fired from her job, cut off from all financial support, and evicted from the apartment. If you want to continue this relationship, you'll need to provide for her yourself." The color was draining from his face. "Miles, I never meant for things to go this far." "Oh, but they have gone this far. In fact, they're about to go much further." I pulled out my phone and showed him a screenshot of one of his text messages to Lila. "Recognize this? It's from your conversation last week about her boring husband and how you couldn't wait to show her what she'd been missing. Where did you get that? Technology is amazing, isn't it? Anyway, I thought you should know that this conversation, along with about 3 dozen others just like it, has been forwarded to some interesting people." "What people?" "Well, your business partner Jared, for starters. He was very interested to learn that you've been using the gym's corporate credit card to pay for hotel rooms. That's embezzlement, by the way." Conrad's face had gone completely white now. "You can't prove that." "Actually, I can. I have copies of all the receipts, cross-referenced with your text messages about meeting Lila. A forensic accountant could connect those dots in about 5 minutes. What do you want?" "Nothing from you, but I thought you should also know that I've sent copies of your messages to the local fitness association. Something about professional standards and conduct unbecoming. And to your landlord. Apparently there are morality clauses in commercial leases these days." "Who knew?" I stood up, smoothing down my jacket. "Oh, and one more thing. Lila will probably be calling you soon, looking for a place to stay. I'm sure you'll work something out." I left him sitting in his glass office, staring at his phone like it might explode. As I walked through the gym toward the exit, I could see him frantically making calls, probably trying to do damage control on a situation that was already far beyond his control. The next morning, I woke up in my apartment, no longer ours, and made coffee in blessed silence. No whispered phone calls, no secretive text messages, no elaborate lies about work conferences and girls' trips. Just peace. My phone rang around 10. It was Hannah. "Miles, you need to see the news. Channel 7 is running a story about financial fraud at local businesses. They're mentioning Hale's Fitness specifically." I turned on the television just in time to see a reporter standing outside Conrad's gym talking about an ongoing investigation into misuse of business funds. The gym's windows were dark, and there was a "closed until further notice" sign on the door. Fast work. I was impressed. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "You destroyed my life. I hope you're happy." I typed back, "I didn't destroy your life. I just stopped subsidizing it." No response. I poured myself another cup of coffee and settled in to watch the news coverage. Sometimes justice comes in a courtroom, with judges and juries and legal precedent. And sometimes it comes with interest rates and credit reports and the inexorable grinding of bureaucratic machinery. Either way, it's still justice. 3 weeks had passed since my life imploded and reassembled itself into something resembling satisfaction. I'd settled into a routine that felt foreign after 15 years of marriage. Morning coffee without conversation, evening meals without pretense, nights without the sound of secretive phone calls from the bathroom. It was glorious. The apartment felt different too, larger somehow, as if Lila's presence had been taking up more space than I'd realized. I'd redecorated, throwing out the throw pillows and scented candles that had served no purpose beyond making our home look like a furniture showroom. In their place, I'd installed a proper home office and a reading corner with a leather chair that was mine alone. But the best part wasn't the solitude. It was watching the dominoes continue to fall. Conrad's gym had closed permanently after the investigation revealed a pattern of financial irregularities that went far beyond paying for hotel rooms with company funds. Apparently, when you're bleeding money and desperate to maintain appearances, you make increasingly poor decisions about which accounts to rob. The Fitness Association had revoked his certifications, and his business partner had filed both criminal charges and a civil lawsuit. Lila, meanwhile, had discovered that the job market for disgraced travel consultants was surprisingly limited. Word travels fast in professional circles, especially when your termination involves documented fraud and ethical violations. She'd been staying with Vera, according to my sources. Hannah had friends everywhere and a talent for gathering information. But that arrangement was apparently wearing thin. Which brought me to Thursday evening, when my carefully orchestrated revenge reached its crescendo. I was reading in my new leather chair when the building's intercom buzzed. The doorman's voice crackled through the speaker. "Mr. Harwood, there's a Ms. Morrison here to see you. Should I send her up?" Vera. This was going to be interesting. "Send her up, James. Thank you." I'd been expecting this visit for weeks. Vera Morrison had been Lila's enabler and confidant through the entire affair, the friend who'd encouraged bad decisions and helped maintain elaborate lies. She was also, I'd recently learned, facing some interesting challenges of her own. She knocked on my door 5 minutes later, and I opened it to find her looking significantly less polished than usual. Vera prided herself on her appearance. She was one of those women who treated every public outing like a photo shoot. But tonight her hair was unwashed, and her designer clothes looked like they'd been slept in. "Miles, we need to talk." "Hello, Vera. Please, come in." She swept into my apartment with the kind of dramatic flair that suggested she'd been rehearsing this moment. "I suppose you're proud of yourself." "I'm content, if that's what you're asking. Can I offer you something to drink? Coffee? Water? A reality check?" "Don't be cute with me. You've destroyed Lila's life." I settled back into my leather chair, gesturing for her to take the couch. "Lila destroyed her own life. I just stopped enabling it." "She's sleeping on my couch, Miles. She has nothing." "She has Conrad. Isn't that what she wanted?" Vera's laugh was bitter. "Conrad? That bastard won't even return her calls. The minute his gym went under, he disappeared. Probably ran back to Mommy and Daddy's estate to lick his wounds." I tried to look surprised, but I wasn't. Men like Conrad were predators of opportunity. They enjoyed the thrill of seduction, but fled from the responsibility of commitment. When Lila had been a married woman with financial security, she'd been an exciting diversion. Now that she was unemployed and homeless, she'd become a liability. "That's unfortunate," I said, "but not my problem. She was your wife for 15 years. She was my wife right up until she decided to sleep with someone else. After that, she became my ex-wife-to-be. The distinction matters." Vera was pacing now, her agitation growing. "You can't just cut her off completely. She needs help." "Then help her. You're her best friend, aren't you? The one who encouraged this whole affair?" She stopped pacing and stared at me. "What are you talking about?" I pulled out my phone and scrolled to a screenshot I'd been saving for just this occasion. This is a text message from Lila to Conrad, dated 3 months ago. "Vera thinks I should go for it. She says life's too short to stay in a boring marriage. Ring any bells?" Vera's face flushed. That's taken out of context. Is it? Because there are about a dozen more messages where Lila talks about your advice, your encouragement, your help in planning their secret meetings. You weren't just her friend, Vera. You were her accomplice. I was trying to help her find happiness. You were helping her commit adultery, and now you want me to clean up the mess you helped create? She slumped onto my couch, suddenly looking older than her 41 years. Miles, please, she's desperate. She's talking about doing things I'm worried about. What kind of things? Dangerous things. There are men who would pay for her company. She's that broke. I felt a flicker of something that might have been concern, but it passed quickly. Then maybe she should have thought about that before she decided to blow up her life for a mediocre gym owner with a trust fund. You're really not going to help her. I'm really not going to help her. But I will give you some free advice, Vera. Distance yourself from this situation before it gets worse. What do you mean? I leaned forward, fixing her with the kind of stare I usually reserved for clients who were lying about their financial situations. I mean that Lila's problems are about to become everyone's problems. The divorce is going to be ugly, and anyone who helped facilitate her affair is going to get dragged into it. Alienation of affection is still a tort in this state, and I have excellent documentation of who said what to whom. The color drained from her face. You wouldn't. Try me. She was quiet for a long moment, processing the implications. Vera worked in public relations, which meant her reputation was her livelihood. A messy legal battle involving adultery and alienation of affection would destroy her professionally. What do you want from me? She asked, finally. Nothing, but I want you to give Lila a message for me. What message? Tell her that her choices have consequences, and she's about to face all of them. Tell her that the life she threw away was the best deal she was ever going to get, and she'll spend the rest of her days knowing it. Vera stood up, her face hard with anger and defeat. You're a cold bastard, Miles Harwood. I'm a man who refuses to be taken advantage of. There's a difference. After she left, I poured myself a glass of the good scotch, the bottle I'd been saving for a special occasion, and returned to my chair. Outside, the city sparkled with lights and possibilities, a world full of people making choices and living with the results. My phone buzzed with a text from Hannah. Saw the news about Conrad Hale. Apparently he's fled to his parents' place in Connecticut, left a lot of debts behind. I typed back, play stupid games, win stupid prizes. What about Lila? What about her? Are you really just going to let her crash and burn? I considered the question while sipping my scotch. 15 years of marriage had to count for something, didn't it? Some residual loyalty or affection that would make me want to soften her landing. But then, I remembered the text messages, the elaborate lies, the casual cruelty of her dismissal of our life together. I remembered her calling me boring and predictable while she planned romantic getaways with another man. I remembered her using my money to finance her betrayal and my trust to cover her tracks. Yes, I typed back. I'm going to let her crash and burn. Some fires need to burn themselves out. The next morning brought news that surprised even me. Vera had apparently taken my advice about distancing herself from the situation. She'd kicked Lila out of her apartment and blocked her phone number. According to Hannah's network of informants, Lila was now staying at a budget motel on the outskirts of town, the kind of place where you pay by the week and try not to look too closely at the stains on the carpet. It was a spectacular fall from grace. 6 months ago, she'd been living in a luxury apartment, traveling the world, married to a man who would have done anything for her. Now she was alone in a fleabag motel, abandoned by her lover, her friends, and her family. I should have felt sorry for her. Part of me expected to feel sorry for her. Instead, I felt nothing but a deep, abiding satisfaction. Justice, it turned out, was a dish that tasted even better than I'd imagined. The divorce papers were finalized on a Tuesday morning in June. I signed them in my lawyer's office, surrounded by mahogany furniture and the smell of leather-bound law books. Lila wasn't present. She couldn't afford an attorney and had been forced to represent herself. "She's agreed to all your terms," my lawyer said, sliding the documents across his desk. "No alimony, no property division, no claims on your retirement accounts. She's essentially walking away with nothing." As it should be. "Miles, I have to ask, are you sure about this? 15 years of marriage, and you're not giving her anything?" I thought about the question while I signed my name on the dissolution papers. She took 15 years of my life, my trust, and my love, and she threw them away for a few months of excitement with a con man. What exactly do I owe her? He nodded, understanding. "Nothing, I suppose." Exactly nothing. I walked out of the lawyer's office a free man, legally and emotionally divorced from the woman who had shared my bed and betrayed my trust. The sun was shining, the birds were singing, and somewhere across town, my ex-wife was learning that actions have consequences. It was the most beautiful day I could remember. That evening, I celebrated with dinner at Chez Laurent, the same restaurant where this whole thing had started. I sat at the same table, ordered the same wine, and toasted my freedom with the kind of satisfaction that money can't buy. As I was finishing my dessert, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "I'm sorry for everything. I know you'll never forgive me, but I needed to say it." I stared at the message for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. Some apologies come too late to matter, and some bridges burn too completely to rebuild. I paid my check, left a generous tip, and walked out into the night air. Tomorrow, I would start the next chapter of my life, older, wiser, and infinitely more careful about who I trusted with my heart. But tonight, I was simply a man